Hello, everyone. So, great news on the front of single payer healthcare. Bernie Sanders introduces his Medicare For All Act with the endorsement of 16 Democratic senators, and I'll read them here. Um, Senator Tammy Baldwin, Richard Blumenthal, Cory Booker, Al Franken, Kristen Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, Martin Heinrich, Mazzy, Hirono, Patrick Leahy, Edward Markey, Jeff Merkley, Brian Schatz, Jean Shaheen, Tom Udall, Elizabeth Warren, and Sheldon Whitehouse. Um, so I feel like we shouldn't celebrate too early, but this is certainly significant progress. We do have to hold everyone accountable, and certain people in particular, like Cory Booker or Kamala Harris, they may just be doing this kind of as an investment for a 2020 run, and we have to be careful about. They say one thing when they campaign, then they govern a different way. That's certainly true, but this is still significant progress because at the end of the day, if they vote for this, for the reasons that I've described, if they do it so that they are a viable candidate, at the end of the day, they did the right thing by voting for it. So that is very important. But of course, we have this on the heels of the release of Hillary's new book, What Happened, ironically titled. And I've tried my very best to refrain from talking about Hillary these past few months. I mean, I've brought her up on occasion, more or less reiterating the same points when it applies. I think I've tried to not go too hard on her, and I feel like I haven't. I haven't really made a video focusing on her until now, but it's certainly necessary because she's doing serious damage. She is making a really bad name for the Democrats and making them seem so out of touch. Especially when you have like basically the people that would agree with her standing up for her like in response to what she's doing, then it's really strengthening the divide between the progressives and the centrist wing of the Democrats. So she blames just about everyone except herself and her campaign for the loss in the election. And she does it in such a condescending way where she'll give these passages like, you can blame me, I was the candidate, those were my decisions. But she stops just short of really kind of saying like, I had the wrong ideas, I had the wrong policies in mind. She's just saying like, it's like, yeah, if you want to blame me, you can. That's fine. I was the candidate, right? But and then the other thing that she says is, we ran a traditional style campaign, and what she means by that is, she was in her little headquarters in Brooklyn, going over the data, and just basically trying to run a whole national campaign from whatever elite circles that you have, and not actually going out and doing the hard work and campaigning. I mean, she didn't even show up in Wisconsin. I mean, she wheeled Bill Clinton out to basically do her job, and she just thought that she had it in the bag. She thought that everyone loved her, even though people in her campaign were very upset with her. It's quite funny to me because you look at people that were in her campaign, those people now, with the release of her book, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she's doing this. I mean, one person literally said that she should shut the fuck up. And that was like in an actual quote in an article. So when your own friends don't like you and what you're doing, that really shows that you're kind of just acting selfishly and have nothing to add positively to the struggle of the left. But yeah, she was deep in her bubble. She did things by the book, quote unquote, um, and miscalculated the populist rage that was going on. I mean, she ran her campaign on America was already great. For a lot of people, that is just not true. For people in the Rust Belt that ended up going towards Trump, they did it um, because of the anti-establishment streak that he had, and to be completely clear, he has not held up on that promise. Trump, he's the establishment whipping boy, um, but he was doing the right things in order to win, and in her mind, she thinks that she can't do that because change is hard, and because she doesn't want to promise anything that she feels like she can't do. Well, you have to show that you stand for something. I mean, this idea that Democrats shouldn't have a litmus test is ridiculous. How are we supposed to be a political party if we don't have any non-negotiable things that we stand for? It's ridiculous. I mean, it's gotten literally to the point where the DNC is totally fine with giving candidates that are pro-life as far as it goes. Um, that's just not okay. You have to have at least a little bit of a difference between you and the Republicans. But what the Democrats, and to be fair, I mean, they've kind of had this strategy for a while. It's not just I shouldn't just blame Hillary Clinton for this, but their strategy is let's bend to the Republicans' will as many times as possible, and then maybe we'll get them to agree with us and do what we want to do. And that's never happened. We've always just bended to what the Republicans want to do, and then whenever we want to do something, they're very steadfast in their obstruction. We've never flipped that formula, which is ridiculous. Hillary flips on everything, including in the primary when she said she tried to make herself equivalent to Bernie, and she said she's a progressive who likes to get things done. And now in her interview with Vox that just came out, she says that we operate better when we're between center left and center right. So what is it? Are you for progressive ideas, or are you for centrist garbage? And so then in the past, Hillary, and I'm sure there's passages in the book as well that kind of parrot this notion. I don't know the exact quotes, but in the past, Hillary has said that Bernie's ideas are too pie in the sky and will never come to pass. But then in her new book, she claims that Bernie stole all her ideas. She had this, or maybe a friend of hers had this reference to the movie There's Something About Mary, about how Bernie would come up with she had like 8-minute abs, then he would come out with 6-minute abs, 4-minute abs, then magic abs. Woo! Oh yeah, that's a really funny point there. I'm sure you really got people on your side. Completely ridiculous. I mean, Bernie has been consistent for decades. So to think that he really stole her ideas is laughable, to say the least. And then we go to Real Time with Bill Maher, where Bill Maher, Fran Lebowitz, and Salman Rushdie discuss the kind of divide in the left, and Hillary and Bernie, and they have completely the wrong conclusion. That they are saying that, or specifically Fran Lebowitz said this. She said that Bernie is a narcissistic old man, and she was sick of him doing what he was doing. So ridiculous, because, like I say, he's been laser focused on policy this whole time. He will literally, when asked a question about are you going to run again? What's your response to Hillary's attacks on you? Even when he's asked a question that's framed that way, he'll find a way to make it about policy and make it about the betterment of everyday people. Hillary is not capable of doing that. She's only capable of really talking about herself, or if she's going to talk about other people, she's going to talk about it in a way that is making her so great. And of course, Clinton is the narcissist here. they make it look like a high school popularity contest. I mean, these are the same people that want to run celebrity candidates. It's all about a cult of personality. Um, it all hinged on, it's my turn to run. I mean, be president. Look at the other candidate. He's not qualified. I'm so much more qualified. But at the same time, only 25% of her ads were focused on policy. So you would think, with if you're so qualified to run, if you're so cultured in that way politically, then you should know the policy set that you should want to stand for. But it was not at the forefront of her run for the presidency. It just wasn't. Now, people ask all the time, how can we afford things like Medicare for All or even free college? But yet, there is overwhelming bipartisan support for endless war. No one in the establishment ever questions whether or not money is an issue then. And then so Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, announces 3,000 more troops to Afghanistan. And then the Senate approves $700 billion on top of what we already spend. So whatever the number is now, it's $700 billion on top of that. And so this is a quote from The Intercept. Sanders joined only 4 Democratic senators to vote against the bill. Kristen Gillibrand, Patrick Leahy, Jeff Merkley, and Ron Wyden. And then the Republicans that voted against it were Bob Corker, Rand Paul, and Mike Lee. So, whenever it's war, whenever it's something that is just going to benefit the corporations and the wealthy, complete and utter agreement across the board. No one in the mainstream media ever calls it out. You won't even hear about this if you turn on the news. It's not even going to be a story, I guarantee you. And so it's never a question whether or not it's fiscally responsible to be throwing money into an endless pit into the Middle East, where we've been there for almost 2 decades now. We've accomplished nothing. It's never, or I should say, it's always a question when it's free college or universal healthcare. Oh, how could we ever afford this? This is ridiculous. Well, first of all, the facts say that single payer would save us money if we were to switch to it compared to what we have now. We spend more per capita, so it's completely backwards from what it should be. And so back to Hillary now. The list of people that she is blamed for her loss is just truly a joke. She blamed the Women's March, saying, I couldn't help but think, where was this enthusiasm during the election? When those are the people that voted for you. Those people are the progressives and people that are overwhelmingly going to be Democrat, and they voted for her. So that's not why she lost. The 12% of Bernie voters that flipped to Trump were Republicans or independent before they went for Bernie. So these centrist hacks who write articles in whatever publication you might think of. I mean, I've seen them in CNN, maybe even some in Vox. They point out this, and they're like, ha ha, 12% of Bernie voters went for Trump, stupid Bernie bros. Look at that. I told you, the Bernie is really bad. But this proves that Bernie would have had crossover appeal, and he probably would have won. He understood the populist angle to this election. He understood that there was a lot of resentment against the establishment and government in general that had been building up. And so it's not necessarily to say that government is bad. I mean, Bernie, identifies as a democratic socialist. So it's not like Bernie is anti-government, but he understands that the corruption is corroding the trust between the people and our people who are supposed to be representing us. I feel like most people are looking at this and seeing that Hillary is doing this to steal attention, maintain her influence in politics. It's all about her and like keeping her agenda at the forefront. And what her agenda is, I guess, is centrism. She's, really doubling down on this ideology. She has a PAC called Onward Together, which is designed to basically just funnel money to her hand-selected candidates. We know this because there's like no one on the staff. There's no one. It's not like a real thing. It's just basically a way for her to launder money to go to candidates. I assume she could just donate the money herself, but it looks kind of more normal to have it this way. It draws less attention. She's even said that she may look into questioning the election results if more evidence about Russian interference comes out. And Trump said the exact same thing before the election. He said, "I would reserve my right to challenge a questionable result." And that's what she's saying now. But when Trump did it, it was deemed unpresidential, un-American, unacceptable, completely beyond the pale. But then when Hillary does it, it's like we're supposed to just act like, facts and evidence don't matter. We can't go back and look at what she said and what others have said. But look, Hillary should do whatever she wants. That's her prerogative. But she has to know that she's doing the Democratic Party a disservice. Okay? When you're out to blame Bernie, the most popular politician in the country right now, and he has 16 Democratic senators signed on to his bill. They're co-sponsors for Medicare For All. You are fighting against the will of your own party. That's what it comes down to. You're trying to be this high-minded person who's like, "Oh, you don't know what's good for you. I know what will really be good for you." And it's exactly the same policies that we've been doing for years that screw over the middle class and give great handouts to the corporations, insurance companies, pharmaceuticals, you name it. And it's so hilarious how she's saying she's that Bernie was only out to impugn her record and smear her, when that's exactly what she did to him. With the Sandy Hook thing, when she said that Bernie doesn't care about the families of the victims of Sandy Hook because he supported this bill that would have prevented people from suing gun manufacturers if like their weapon was used to kill someone. Totally common sense thing to say, right? If I run over someone with a car or with a car, should the family of that victim be able to sue General Motors or whatever? No, that's ridiculous. The car is an inanimate object. The gun is an inanimate object until it's being used by someone to do a horrible thing. So, no, I don't think you have, unless there was some kind of foul play where there wasn't a background check, and a gun store was being negligent in that way. Of course, there should be no liability there. But yes, as I said, alienating his supporters, making them feel even more disillusioned by the Democratic Party than they already are. They're setting themselves up for failure if they want to continue down this wishy-washy road. Like, I've even seen Chuck Schumer try to muddy the waters about Medicare for All. Be like, well, there's this bill, and there's that bill, and there's lots of bills. We're going to read all of them. No, they're not all the same, and to equate them is completely false. A Medicare buy-in is not the same thing as Medicare for All. So, you gotta at least be clear about what you stand for, but that's not what they're doing. They want to keep their options open as much as possible, so that they don't fail their litmus test that us progressives want. The establishment, that they just want you to bow your head, reject this idea of a litmus test, vote for us because we have a D in front of our name, and that's not going to do. It's going to have to come down to actual policy. And it's a game that the Democrats could win if they wanted to capitalize on it. Because look, when you go down the list of policies, and this was true before the election, this was true during the primaries. Vox, who is a publication that is much more on the centrist side of things, was very kind of pro-Hillary. They released a report which was very interesting that showed that the American people's views are very much in alignment with Bernie Sanders, even though you might see on the news that it's like so far left and it's completely radical. But for the American people, I think it's something like 50, somewhere between 50 and 60% are in favor of single payer. 90% of people want a full pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants. Around that number, like 80 to 90% want to raise the minimum wage. And if you go down, it's like because there's polls for like if you want to raise $12 versus 15, it's around 80 for $15 though. So the American people are progressive. They don't feel like there's anything out there that's representing them. That there's nothing that they can put their trust behind in order to get the policies that they want. That's what it all comes down to, right? And Bernie was the only one doing that, basically. I mean, he came from nothing, and then even with the entire establishment against him, he went from 2% in the polls to like almost tying up the race, winning 23 states. I mean, it's quite incredible when you really think about what he was able to accomplish. So I'm going to close with good old Joy-Ann Reid, who, in her infinite wisdom, for those of you who don't know, she's a host on MSNBC who used to be a progressive. She basically called Hillary a racist one time. Now she's about as pro-Hillary as it gets. She says that the, quote, PBR voters, aka the white working class, people in the Rust Belt, these people are unreachable to the Democrats. They aren't Democrats, so we should not even try to go for those voters. Just completely false. It's not only that it's wrong, it's demonstrably untrue. There was a large portion of voters in Michigan who voted for Obama twice and then voted for Trump. And the reason for that is because there was a populist, anti-establishment vigor in this country. A large part of it, if you're talking about Michigan, the trade deals and TPP were a pretty big role in this election. And Hillary, as much as she really tried to kind of wash that away from her record, it was just too close. Like basically, as soon as she decided to become Bernie Sanders on that issue and be like, yeah, now I'm against it. Well, you had actually lobbied for it 40 times, and you called it the gold standard, and Trump was totally right by pointing that out. So this actually gets to a very important point. Hillary says that Bernie did a lot of damage to her by pointing out her flaws, I guess. And he set up the image of the crooked Hillary campaign that Donald Trump ran. Counterpoint, I think Hillary set up the image of crooked Hillary and did damage to herself by making the decisions that she did. By getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to make to do speeches in Wall Street. By doing that, she showed people that her real loyalty lies with the corporations, with the donors, of course. And we saw it happen with Obama, and we weren't falling for it again. So completely out of touch. She thought that she could just basically like sneak past this election without actually standing for anything and just being like, I'm better than the other guy. And in order for her to do the opposite, to basically be the Bernie Sanders type, had she not made the decisions that I can't talk today, the decisions that she made, um, even when it comes to foreign policy, intervention in Libya and so forth, um, those were certainly gonna uh, make her record not look attractive. But even if you take that, I would say, if she wasn't so pro corporate and she just tried to basically be a progressive like she was in the past, it would have been fine. I mean, she more or less was progressive in the past. She was pro single payer when she was first lady. Even when she ran against Obama, she was for single payer. But she got too cozy in this current political system. And so she doesn't actually want to change anything. She said in the Vox interview, like, "Oh, I care about change, and I understand that it's hard, and I just think about like how are we gonna get there and all." Well, that's not what people want to hear. Um, the game of politics is saying what you want to fight for people, acknowledging that change is hard. I mean, look, of course, everyone knows that change is hard. We all knew this, with Obama, and he would say that too. But he would also follow that up by saying, like, we're all going to stand up and unify and fight for these things because we believe in them. But she stopped short of that. She would be like, change is hard, so basically I just don't really want to change that much. I'm going to be an incrementalist. That was not a good political strategy for her. Um, she should have been, and also, I mean, beyond that, it's simply, it's the right thing to stand up for Medicare for all. It is consistent with history. In when it comes to the Democrats, single payer goes back to FDR. He had basically a second Bill of Rights that outlined a universal health care system, but it was never implemented, of course. Um, but she's like, "Oh, these things will never come to pass, so I just want to do what I want to do." What that is the corporations and donors telling her to keep the status quo. I mean, she actually not her, Chelsea Clinton smeared Bernie by saying like he wants to repeal the ACA, Obamacare, which is so narrow-minded. Like to actually equate what Bernie is in favor for to the Republicans because they want to repeal Obamacare. To frame it in that way is so completely out of touch and ridiculous. Um, so as I've said, this is a cult of personality when it comes to Hillary. It's so funny because that's how her supporters will smear Bernie and his supporters. They say, "Oh, you only care about like listening to your demigod Bernie, and you'll never question what he does." Well, actually, if you go down the list, I have like most things I agree with Bernie on, but there are certain aspects like with Israel and Palestine where I don't agree with Bernie, and I think he could be a lot better. I'm actually objective, and I look at things based on the merits, case by case, issue by issue here. So, whereas we care about actual policy, Hillary and her ilk, care about looking good. They they want to just feel warm and fuzzy inside without actually anything concrete that they like. I mean, ask any Hillary supporter why they voted for her. I guarantee you're not going to get a policy answer. I guarantee it. They're going to say something to the effect that Trump was bad, Hillary was the lesser of two evils, perhaps the more intelligent ones would say, but it's it's hopeless when it comes to Hillary at this point. I don't know how she can rehabilitate her image. She's just gone way too far. I mean, even her freaking book signing was a disaster. She showed up an hour late. She showed up, didn't even acknowledge anything about being late, and she's like, to the people in the front of the line, can you just move forward a little bit? We want to get this going. So it became quite clear that she was just using her supporters to basically, like, she wanted to make sure that this book got to number one. So that's why they even had these stupid policies when you would show up. You could only get What Happened signed. It takes a village signed. So they just wanted to make sure people bought the freaking thing. I don't think she cares about whether or not people read it.